This is a class or a series of lectures on one of the most holy texts called the Taittiriya Upanishad. Taittiriya. Can you say that? Taittiriya. Yeah, Taittiriya. What does this Taittiriya means? You know, I will tell you. So, what does Upanishad means? That also I'll tell you. Taittiriya means pertaining to or belonging to the Tittiri bird. Tittiri is the name of a bird. Why did they think of naming the bird Tittiri? Because that's how it goes. Tittiri, tittiri, tittiri. It's a rain bird. That's its call. Tittiri, tittiri, tittiri. At least to the lay person who is not in touch, which is, you know, most of us right now, not in touch with the language of animals and birds and nature. To one uneducated in the language of animals, in the language of nature, in the language of birds, it seems as though the bird is saying what? Tittiri, tittiri, tittiri. That's what one hears. But in ancient India, a sage was sitting under the tree where these two Tittiri birds were talking. Tittiri, 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 one said. The other one also got very excited and said, tittiri, tittiri, tittiri to you too. And that's what other people heard. But what did the sage hear? Om Brahma Vida Apnoti Param. Tadeshabhyukta Satyam Jnanamanantam Brahma Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman Soshnute Sarvan Kamaan Saha Brahmana Vipaschiteti. This much we are going to see, you know. More than that, you know, we will have to spend a long time. Yeah, we'll have to be here for a very long time. So in the scope of 1 week, this much if we see, it is like seeing the whole. Why? Because if you read an essay or a writing and you read the first paragraph of any work, like if it's a academic work or if it's any kind of an article, if you are a book, if you read the synopsis on the jacket cover, you know, it says this is what is whatever, this is the thing, this is the, you know, this is what is going to happen. Then you know the whole situation. You know the whole situation. You know the summary of the thing is in the first paragraph. What is it called? The thesis statement. In English it's called the thesis statement. Why? Because it is courteous if you are a writer to state beforehand what you are going to talk about, so that you don't take your readers or your audience on a big spin. The Tittiri birds are known to be very polite and so they give a beautiful thesis statement in the beginning, which I just chanted, and we are going to unfold that. We are going to study that together. Yeah, we are going to see what they mean. And also, as an added bonus, now tomorrow we will have a white board or black board, some board we'll have, so that we don't get bored. And as an added bonus, we will also learn how to chant it. So we will learn just one line now. Om Brahma Vida Apnoti Brahma Vida Apnoti Param. Om Brahma Vida Apnoti Param. Om Brahma Vida Apnoti Param. Tadeshabhyukta Tadeshabhyukta Om Brahma Vida Apnoti Param. Om Om Brahma Vida Apnote Param Tadesha Bhyukta. Yeah, now we also know bird talk. Yeah. Yeah. So, what this means and all, we have to see. So, we have seen what Tittiri means, the Taittiriya Upanishad, Taittiriya pertaining to the Tittiri bird, of the Tittiri bird. Tittiri bird is the one that, gave this knowledge, we say, because it's not that, we can take it literally, like, okay, the universe has a lot to teach. Nature is not called Mother Nature for nothing. You learn everything is your teacher. Even a rock is your teacher. Why? Because it has lived much longer. Its life history is much more interesting than everybody's life history in this room put together because it will start with talking about dinosaurs, whose footprints it carries. Today it came in the paper. In Arizona, there are all these dinosaurs, footprints. And then from those dinosaur footprints, you can make out what? Whether the dinosaurs walked, two-footed, four-footed, whether they were sloppy and dragged their tails behind them, or whether they picked up their tails and just walked. This is the story that the rock has to tell. Yeah. Whereas, our stories are what? 19 so-and-so to 19 so-and-so dash. That's all. 17 children, 5 marriages, and many confusions, many problems, all in that dash. Finished. Yeah. So a rock can, even outdo you. That is the whole kind of a situation. So we can even take it like that. We can take it as a blessing of the Tittiri birds, since the human beings are so helpless, hopeless and hapless, to figure what are the realities. One needs help, and help, of course, always comes from that which created everything. Where else can one get help? So even here, this kind of a embroiling, one is embroiled in some or entangled in some kind of a situation that one doesn't think or one doesn't understand, and even to extricate oneself out of that, the same source has to help. The person or the entity, the conscious force that made the Tittiri bird will also imbue the words into the mouth of the Tittiri bird. You can take it that way. Or you can take it this way, that a sage sitting under the tree, was ready to receive this knowledge, and the twittering or the tittiriing of the Tittiri birds was enough of an impetus to inspire to channel these words that we just chanted. So these words are not ordinary words. We call them, therefore, rightfully apaurushaya. Purushaha means human being. Paurushayam, purushasya idam paurusham, and purushat udbhavam paurushayam. So that which is born of the purusha means a person, paurusheya. But here it is apaurusheya, negated. Negated means opposite. Opposite of paurusheya. Opposite of paurusheya means not human made. Yeah. That's why, and that is how the people who are seeking this knowledge have to look upon the entire Veda. The entire teaching has to be looked upon as something, as a means of knowledge. We'll talk about this a lot more, as a pramana, as a means of knowledge which teaches one to get out of this particular predicament, which is called the universal human condition, which I will talk about very soon. So this is the whole thing. So Taittiriya, and what is this thing called Upanishad? We have to see. Upanishad is a body of knowledge. The word shad means what? Shadl. Can't even say it sometimes. Yeah. It's a vowel. Lr is a vowel. Only in Sanskrit, right? Yeah. No other language would lr be a vowel. Shadl is the whole word, which means what? To destroy. Okay. So Upanishad means what? That which destroys. It's an agent noun. So that which destroys. And Shadalru has three meanings. One is, then one is what? Avasadayati, destroys without a trace, puts an end to. Okay, if it puts an end to, will that come back again? Even, you weed the garden regularly. Especially in such a rainy place like Eugene, the weeds grow faster than the plants that you wanted to grow. So you have to keep weeding. Once you pick out the weeds, then what? The weeds will come back. And so here also, will whatever it is removing, and we yet have to see what it is, will whatever the undesirable things that it is removing from me, will those undesirable back? No. Visharati. Visharati means completely destroys without disintegrates. Like the fog disintegrates in the wake of the sun. The fog disintegrates. So, therefore, this, this knowledge disintegrates all undesirable things in one's life. It totally disintegrates. So far we have what? Defined it only in negative terms. What it does. Bad things. It disintegrates, it destroys, it takes away undesirable things. But is there something desirable that it does? Yes. The final meaning of the word, the root word shadalr means what? It takes you, closer to what? Brahman, Brahma gamayati. What is this Brahman? We will see. But then if it takes you to Brahman, and if it removes undesirable things, therefore we can conclude that Brahman must be a desirable thing. That is what we can conclude tentatively. Yeah. So what does it remove? And why this Upanishad is there, what it removes and all, we have to see. Again, so the word Shad we have seen. Upa and Ni are prefixes. Whenever the prefix Ni comes, it means Nishchayena, definitely, without a doubt. It's like the Upanishad is assuring, yes, definitely it will remove without a doubt. Upa means what? Samipe, the one, it will remove all things that stop one from what? Being oneself. Upa. Upa means that which is the nearest to one. What is nearest to you? Well, depends on what the question is. The word nearest is relative. How can I say what's nearest? Where I am sitting, whatever this is, this recording device is nearer. The computer is nearest, whatever you can say. And then that, this table is near. You are near. If I sat over there, something else would be near. From the standpoint of Eugene, Portland is near. From the standpoint of Portland, Seattle is near. From the standpoint of the Earth, Mercury is near. Mars is nearer. So how do you say what is near? Near means what? Near means that which is the nearest to one is really one's own self, nothing else. One's own self is the nearest. Also the dearest. Yeah. So, Upanishad is that body of knowledge which removes self-confusion. Confusion about myself leads to all kinds of problems. And this confusion removed, then there is just no confusion. No confusion is a good thing. Why? Because if there is no confusion, it doesn't lead me to self-doubt, questioning, sorrow centered upon the self, grief, anger, fear. These are called in Sanskrit anartha vrataha. Vrata means group. Yeah. Group of anarthas. Anarthas means things that I do not want. Why only one person? Not just one person. Something that nobody wants. Do you want to be angry? Raise your hand. Nobody wants to be angry. Do you want to be sad? No, nobody wants to be sad. Individually one understands, I don't want to be sad. That is the reality. Not only do I not want to be sad, I know that the other person also doesn't want to be sad. Yeah. In fact, I have tried everything. That's why I'm here. Yeah, that's a good thing, Yeah. So one doesn't want to be sad. One doesn't want negative emotions. One doesn't want to be in the grip of fear. One doesn't want to be in the grip of all kinds of, scarcity. One doesn't want to be upset. One doesn't want to be disturbed. One doesn't want to be perturbed. One doesn't want to feel a sense of lack. These are all, if you ask anybody anywhere, this is the universal human want. How do you put it in one word? All these I don't want, I don't want, I don't want. How do you put it in one word? I want to be free. I want freedom. In Sanskrit called moksha, which is our jam on the bread and butter. Yeah. Yeah, moksha is the jam. So, what is this moksha? How to understand it, and what is this struggle that we have to see? That the Upanishad, gives a very tall promise. It's not a small promise. A very tall promise that it will completely annihilate, not you, but the sense of limitation. If the self is limited, truly, if oneself is limited, if that is the truth of the self, then that means what? If limitations are real, if limitations centered on the self are real, what are the limitations? I am bound, I am small, I don't like my hair, I don't like my clothes, I don't like my body, I don't like this, I don't like that, I had a bad childhood, in fact even now I am a hood. All these complexes centered around the self. Yeah. That I am unacceptable to myself. This is the thing. The fact that I am unacceptable to myself is a huge problem. This is a universal problem. And lifetime after lifetime after lifetime is spent what? Trying to fix up the self. Yeah. You keep fixing it up. And seems it to be growing bigger, because if there is a water leaking, you put your thumb, you stop the leak of the water, then what happens? Then it grows bigger. Then you put your whole palm. Then after that what happened? You put your fist. Yeah, then you put two palms side by side somehow. Then you put your head. Then you have to put your whole body. Still it is an endless thing. So this cannot, be fixed up, because it is endless. You fix up one part, something else breaks. It's like a house of cards. The whole search for self-acceptance is like keeping a set of domino cards, house of cards, alive. One little gust of wind of someone saying, oh, you're wearing that today, enough. Whole thing is gone. No, what's wrong with it? You don't like the color? No, it's fine. I just commented, that's all. Yeah, but you don't like the style? No, it's okay. No, really. No, what is it that you don't like? Yeah, tell me. No, everything is fine. I like it. No. Now you're just telling me that so that I can feel better. But it's of no use, because I feel worse on two counts. First, you said I don't look good. No, I didn't say that. See, and now you're trying to cover it up. See, now I feel worse because twice. You feel hurt, the other person feels guilty. It's a pity party guest list. That's what happens. This is what is called samsara, where your happiness is dependent on someone else, on something else, on a set of people, on a set of, some external circumstances, job, person, relationship, friendships, all these things are so many props that hold me up, like that 150-year-old cherry tree by the river. Have you seen that cherry tree? Yeah, our Deshpandes took me there once. And so this is the whole thing. The cherry tree, poor thing, it's old, past its time, but it's alive. I don't know if it still gives flowers and fruits. Perhaps it does. Yeah. So it's very much alive. And it has withstood the slings and arrows of so many generations, and then, including global warming, everything it has, it's still withstanding. They have the Eugene people who are very conservationists have built little things, like the sadhus have a little, they do meditation, they have this cup shaped thing, a staff with a pole underneath, like a cup shaped and a thing. So you rest your hand there and do your bead so that the hand doesn't, ache, and you can spend the time. So similarly, this tree has one kind of a pole like that, an iron pole coming down from the tree in almost all directions, as many main branches. Now what about the other branches in between? They are connected by wires, aluminum wires or copper wires, I don't know. They are connected by wires. Each thing, the whole thing is a network. Yeah, that tree represents samsara, really. How? Because in order to stay alive, it needs a whole, architectural front to keep it alive. Yeah, it needs engineers who should know how gravity and everything works, and which branch should be connected to which branch to keep it propped. It needs masons. It needs everything. Similarly, this hopeless, helpless person also wants what? A whole system to hold the person up. Every day, day after day, life after life. One needs to be propped up. Yeah. One needs to be kept in good humor. One needs to be encouraged. Somebody should always say, "Oh, you did very good." Really? Why? Why are you saying that? So they have to find out some reason. You have to convince the other person you mean it. This is the whole situation. And then they are not convinced, so you have to make something up, quickly. Yeah. You're so lovable. Why? What are you going to say? You have to make something up. What are the exact reasons I am lovable? Tell me now. And that is because of a certain insecurity centered on the self, a certain sense of limitation. Yeah. And one is almost, there is some kind of a self-destruct mechanism that is going on that I really don't understand, but one is waiting to, not waiting to exhale, but waiting to explode. Self-sabotage. All one look enough. Oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What did I do? No, nothing. No, I know you did this, so I'm going to do this. So one becomes hypersensitive, like a walking landmine, waiting to be stepped on. You don't even, one little wind blows this way, the person just, explodes or melts, has to be carried out of the room in buckets. This is the person collapses on you, literally. And that's okay. If a few people are like that in society, the whole society can work to uphold them. But unfortunately, each person needs a whole society to uphold them. What are you going to do? Each one needs a whole group of people to uphold them, keep them in good humor, give them timely compliments, time release compliments. You can't give it all at once and say the whole day it'll be over. Every few minutes you have to say, "Oh, that was great. That was wonderful. That was nice." What happened? 10 minutes you've not said anything. What's wrong? No, nothing is wrong. This is the whole thing. There seems to be a certain distaste for limitation. There seems to be a certain distaste for feeling confined. There's sometimes even this body is too much to carry. You cannot change it, wherever you go, it goes along with all the diseases and problems it has. It keeps going. Instead of it keeping you going, you have to keep it going. Yeah, by feeding organic food and raw food and I don't know what else. Macrobiotics. There are some of us who do that. But so this whole thing is, one has to keep it going all the time. And this is the human condition where something is always not right. The inner judge is out, the inner cop is out, the inner critic, the inner proofreader, all these characters have made life really hell. This is the human condition. Somehow one is able to forget about it. In fact, one tries one's best to forget about it. And in fact, the whole consumer society, all the commercial, media and the advertisements, etc., are geared towards forgetting about oneself, because there seems to be a universal sense of self-loath, self-contempt, self-doubt, fear of oneself, all these things, self-non-acceptance, in one word. This universal self-non-acceptance is the situation that needs to be. I'll let them get settled in. Here there is some place. Sit. The universal self non-acceptance is the one that needs to be looked at. This universal self non-acceptance. And why do I call it universal? Because you cannot go to your friend and say, I have a really difficult problem. What is the problem? I can't seem to accept myself. Wherever I go, whatever I do, this seems to be so difficult. What is he or she going to say? He or she is going to say, yeah, I also have the same problem. Oh, let's go see a movie together. Let's get distracted for some time. That's the best you can do? Yeah. Or if there is more than 2 people, you can start a support group. Yeah. Permanently non-accepting of oneself, support group. This is how support groups are born. Yeah. Dangerous things sometimes. Yes, one needs support. One is not doubting that. But what, how, where, all these has to be understood. So there is this rankling feeling that something is not okay. Evidenced by the fact, all you need to do, and I do this a lot, I go in airports. Have you been inside an airport? Yeah? You have? No? Not yet? You'll go soon, you'll see. So when you go to the airport, there'll be lots of people. Yeah, you can come visit me, then you will see the airport. Yeah. So you see lots of people. Each one is having a bag. Each one is going somewhere. They're all in the waiting area, waiting for the plane to come. You won't see anyone sitting still. Not a single person. What are they doing? Reading. Okay. Talking. In the beginning, I thought they were talking to themselves. Really. But then I saw one small 2-inch thing coming out of the ear. And somebody told me it is called Bluetooth. Why the tooth is inside the ear and why the tooth is blue, it is beyond me. That is not the scope of this talk. Okay? But know that there is such a thing called a Bluetooth. It protrudes from the ear. Okay? And it doesn't bite, it hears. Yeah, it hears conversations. Yeah, really, once or twice I saw, I said, what is wrong with this person? This person is talking to themselves. Yeah, I was about to say something, can I help you or something like that. Fortunately, I saw this little piece. Yeah, recently only. I'm also getting educated. Yeah. So this Bluetooth device, is what is there. Why? Because permanently it is latched on to the ear. It's not that while they are talking it's there. After the conversation, when the conversation finishes, they only know, and God knows, and the other person on the other line knows. Only 3 entities know. Then after that, what? That thing is still sticking there, just in case another phone comes or what, I don't know. But anyway, so this Bluetooth device, somebody will be talking. Somebody will be, pacing up and down. And even if supposing they have finished talking on every single contact on their cell phone, and if you finished reading their book, and if they have nothing to do, finished listening to the music, or they don't have their iPod, or their iPod is out of battery, what will they be doing? Shaking some leg or hand. Yeah. It's that inner restlessness, which is really not a restlessness. I can't stand myself. Therefore, I approach the world with an understanding that nobody should be able to stand me. Yeah, if I can't stand myself. And if supposing somebody, pretends to like me a little bit, how nice. Then what happens? That person who likes me also suffers from the same sense of, that friend also suffers from the same sense of limitations, same problems, same sense of self-loath, same sense of, contempt, same sense of disregard, all the things, the same things is mirrored in the other person. So my own limitations plus the other person's limitations, what does it give? Limited plus limited is equal to?
Super limited.
Super limited, doubly limited. Very good. Limited plus limited is doubly limited. But it is these limitations that I cannot seem to stand. I cannot seem to stand these limitations centered, and they seem to be centered on me, on myself. And I can't handle it. I want to get rid of it, or at least I want to forget about it. That's why sleep is so welcome. Yeah. If one is an insomniac, pun intended, so one has to quickly go to the store and get all kinds of devices, kava, or whatever it is, to go to sleep. Because in sleep, there is no pain, no, division. No division, no pain. There is no division means what? In sleep, you don't know you're there. And you are not separate from everything else. All the fears, all the problems, all the pains during the day. Bad day at school, bad day at work, bad day with the parents, bad day with the children, whatever it is, in sleep, it's a 8-hour long Om Shanti moment. It's wonderful. Why? Because there are no divisions in sleep. I as the doer, I as the pramata, the knower, I as this separate entity, separated out from the rest of the world out there to get me. That's why I need burglar alarm, personal alarm, this alarm, that alarm, And even with all the alarms, I'm constantly alarmed. This is the situation. This is the human situation. So in sleep, what happens? It's a disarming. Why? Because there is nothing to be afraid of. How do I know? Because the person who is fearful and the object of fear meld together. Wow! Is that possible? Yes, every night in sleep it is possible. Even during the day it's possible. Whenever you can nod off, it is possible. Yeah. So this is what it is. That is why everybody loves sleep, because everybody loves no division. And if everybody loves no division, everybody loves Vedanta, because Vedanta is the king and the queen of no division. It is the knowledge of no division. No division between me and what I am afraid of. Yeah. If I am afraid of something, then I figure out what? Something, is shadow. Oh my God, there is that creepy shadow. Look here. Creepy shadow. I'm afraid. Then I follow the shadow. Oh, it's my own hand. Am I afraid now? No, it's my own hand that is moving in the shape of a bird, or, you can make like here. See, you can see the shadow. This is a deer going. See? Do you see the deer? Yeah, this is the deer. You see it in Eugene. Yeah. So, if supposing somebody is afraid of the deer and goes, then you follow where this thing, okay, when my hand moves, that also moves. Oh, okay, this deer is not separate from my hand. When I understand that what I was afraid of is but an extension of myself, is the fear there? No. The left hand is never afraid of the right hand, Imagine the scenario. You go to do namaste. I don't know how these thoughts come. silly but funny. Why? Because left hand frightened of right hand. Oh my God! Yeah, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen because they always work together. Why? Because it's all me. It's all me. It's an extension of me. This finger, me. This finger, me. In between,
Me.
not me. How me? Not me. Because you can prick here, you can prod here, you can poke here. I don't feel it. Not me. Me again. Not me. Me. Not me. So therefore, if I'm sitting like this, I don't know why I'd be sitting like this, but supposing if I'm sitting like this and a bullet passes through, okay? In Georgia, this is very possible because the ashram land borders some deer hunters. Yeah. So it's very possible. Yeah. So what is the moral of the story before the story is told? In Georgia, when you visit the ashram, don't sit like this. So let's say if a bullet whizzes past and it doesn't touch either on here, it goes in the not me area. What can I say? Bach gaya. Phew, thank God, oh my God, and I'll be talking about it for the rest of my life. Do you know what happened when I went to the ashram in Georgia? I happened to be, Yeah, you'll get bored of it. Yeah, you'll get tired of it. Yeah, so much the person will be talking about it. Yeah, so this is the whole situation. So this me, not me business becomes a cause of fear. Yeah. Becomes a cause for the limitations to be centered upon. Yeah. So as long as there is something that is not me, then I can be afraid of it, right? And chances are I will be afraid of it because what is this not me? Do I know it? Will I know it fully? Enough not to be afraid of it? Will I trust it? And if I trust it, will it betray my trust? What? The not me. The me can never betray the trust. Even if this hand, gets struck by a stroke and stops functioning, it will still kind of go along. It will still do a few things. It will still kind of hobble along. It will not be a source of fear. Because it's still me. Not functioning, still me. Functioning, still me. Acting funny, still me. Yeah. So even as a reminder, if I say bad, if I hit myself, let's say, it's still not a cause of fear because it's all me. The moment I make the distinction me, not me, there seems to be some changed scenario. What is that changed scenario? The changed scenario is just this, that if there is something other than me, the thing that is not me becomes the cause of my being overwhelmed, my being afraid, my being fearful, my being limited. Because I can compare myself to it, it could be bigger than me. If it's bigger than me, it can come and get me, right? Yeah. If it's bigger than me, it can come get me. And if it is huge, then I won't have any space. I won't have any elbow room. If there is anything other than me, I will definitely feel limited. I will definitely feel limited. And how is it not possible to feel limited? Look around you. All these people, all these bodies, not me, not me, not me, not me, not me, so many not me's. And the me, each time you say not me, it shrinks, 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 shrinks. The not me becomes huge and the me becomes this small little thing forgotten somewhere. And that's why I have to clear my throat if I want attention. Yeah, hello, I'm here too. And this I, which is overwhelmed by what it is not, seeks to know what it is, seeks to understand what it is, seeks to, inhabit what it is, seeks to take up a little more space, and still it is not happy. Still it is limited because it's one of the many things. This, in one word, is samsara. Samyak sarati. That sarati means moves, that which moves without any help from anybody else. Yeah, you don't need you don't need to say, I need to do some social work. Oh, that's great. What are you working in? I need to make sure that samsara keeps going. No, you don't need to keep samsara going. Samsara keeps you going. Yeah, samsara doesn't require any help. All you need is two individuals. Two limited individuals. Two individuals thinking they are limited is enough for samsara to keep going. One misunderstanding, one missed understanding is enough to keep samsara going. Samsara means being always on the battleground of a condition which seems to overwhelm me by what I am not, and seeking to be something that I feel I can be and not knowing how to be that. That is samsara, and that is the universal human condition. You ask anybody anywhere, if they are aware of this, they will say, yes, this is the problem, this is the condition. Therefore what? Therefore, one has to really think, what is this situation in terms of myself? If the self is limited, if the truth of the self is limited, then there is no hope. Why? Because I am limited. If that is the truth, then no matter how many doors I knock on, no matter how many self-help courses and workshops I take, positive thinking workshops, doesn't work. Why? Because the self is limited. So that which is limited, if that is the truth, you cannot change it. Like right now, in this part of the world, the sun has gone down, correct? Can you change that? No. Why? Because that is the truth. At least on this empirical reality, the fact that it is sundown now, sun has gone down, is the truth. You cannot alter it. Yes, you can take an ultrasonic flight somewhere else where it's still daylight, that is possible, but you cannot alter the fact that right here, right now, it is, dark. You cannot alter that. So if oneself is limited, then so be it. Nothing more to do, nowhere to go, nothing to seek. One should be happy being limited, because that which is the one is happy at night. One is not always lamenting the sundown. Oh, the sun is setting, I'm about to cry. Why? Because the sun is setting. But it does that every day. Yeah, but I don't like it. I'm going to cry because the sun is setting. Nobody does that. Yeah, okay, you turn on the light, you try to be as comfortable as possible despite the fact that it is going to be dark. You turn on the light, or you do, windmills or whatever you need to do. Catch a lightning, something, make your own electricity. Yeah. So you can do all those things. You take care of the situation. You take care of the situation by accepting this is how it is. So therefore, if limitations are the truth of the self, one should be able to accept that this is how it is and move on. But one never gives up. One is not able to accept it. Yeah. But why? Because even though one seems to be limited, one desires that which is limitless. I want to be what? Limitless. How can you chart the journey from limited to limitless? How is that possible? If you are limited, you cannot become limitless. Why? Because if there is such a thing called the limitless, it is not an act, it is not a product. It cannot be a product. Why not? Like if you have a small snowball and if you collect more and more, that's what is called snowballing, You snowball the snowball and you snowball the snowball some more, you can have a big snowball. If 150 people got together and made a snowball, how big will that be? Okay, as big as a small asteroid, you can say, fine. As big as a planet, okay. as big as Jupiter, okay, we know, but still in terms of a certain size. Even Jupiter is limited. Saturn, limited. Rings around the Saturn, limited. Everything is limited. So how much is big? Whatever is created, whatever is a product of creation is limited. Why? Because what are you using to make this? Time, limited. What are the ingredients in the cooking pot? Time, limited. Resources like hard work, physical labor, limited. Funds, always limited. Don't talk to me about funds. It's no fun. Yeah. Funds limited, time limited, resources limited, and the know-how also limited. So how can limited know-how, limited time, limited resources, and limited, energy produce the limitless? Cannot. It is just a physical impossibility. It is just completely, it's a logical impossibility. That which is limited cannot suddenly produce the limitless. Yeah. They had, there is what is that? This baby tiger, this tiger was there. One tiger was there, and it had given birth to cubs. The cubs died. But then these piglets, the mother of the piglets died. Okay? So the piglets were covered in yellow cloth with tiger stripes, that velvet cloth, and presented to the mother. The mother was thrilled. Oh, here are my babies. It fed them, no problem. Yeah, it thought that it could pass them off as its own babies, no problem. The zookeepers were delighted, everybody was happy, the sanctuary, whatever it was. And she got very protective of them also. And if anybody came, she would growl. Yeah. What in other times she would have eaten, she was feeding. Yeah. She was feeding the dinner and the breakfast and the lunch. Yeah. Those were not their names, okay? Yeah, there were 3 of them, all right, but they were not called breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, this, the tiger, the piglets can pass off as tiger cubs, sure. But the limited cannot pass off as the limitless. Cannot. Because one knows. Why? Because one is in search of it. So, if the limited cannot produce the limitless, if the limitless is not a product, then what is it? If there is such a thing as the limitless, it must already be existent. It must already be there. It must already be there. Yeah, if there is such a thing as limitless. We don't know if there is there or not. We have to find out, right? Yeah. So, if there is such a thing as the limitless, it must already be in existence. Oh, Abba, thank God, I don't have to, I don't have to produce it. That itself is, everybody is feeling relieved. Okay, it's already there. Okay, great. But then immediately one doubt comes. How do you know it's there? Just because you say I have to believe? Yeah? Is it based on belief? No, not really. It's based on a universal human search. What is it that one seeks to lose? Limitations. When does one seek to lose them? Right now, yesterday, day before yesterday. How long do you want to be limitless for? Tick, 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 tick. Forever. Don't stop. Stop. I don't want the time to keep running. I want to be limitless forever. Eternally, I want to be limitless. I want to lose this sense of all these restrictions and these rules. I hate rules. Even if I'm not a teenager, I secretly hate rules. If I'm a teenager, I have the, I have the privilege of openly not liking rules. Yeah. I can say it. I hate curfew. I hate this. I hate that. This is not right. Yeah, if I'm over 21, I can feel it in my heart. I may not express it. One feels that there is not enough room. So, this is what one is in search of. This is what one wants to be. What? Limitless. Happy. Happy? Okay, fine. How do you know happiness is limitless? Yeah, don't think you up till now you were talking about limitlessness. Don't think you can change the word and fool me, because I'm listening. I've been to a few of these talks, so I know what's coming. How can happiness be limitless? Because happiness is limitlessness, because how long you want to be happy? Always. Yeah, that always is what we are talking about. That is that limitlessness that I seek. How do I know I seek that? Yeah. Because I experience it every day. When? In sleep. In sleep, I am free. Whether I am free or not, other people are free of me for the time that I am asleep. Because I can't get into trouble, I can't create trouble for other people. But really, one is free in sleep. One is limitless in sleep. Like I said, when the divisions disappear, then what? There is complete freedom. And that is what I want. Any kind of slight limitations I cannot handle. And this is what the Veda, this is the knowledge that says that you are what you seek. Oh, really? Yes. No, I don't believe you. Well, it's not a matter for belief. It's not a matter for belief. If you say, I don't believe the sun has set, it doesn't matter, right? Because the sun has set. I don't believe you are sitting here. I am sitting here. So you cannot wish something. It is what is called a certain kind of a denial. This is not a matter for belief. It's a matter for understanding. The ruthless removal of all things that are in the way of understanding. That is what this is a matter for. Nothing else. That I am free of limitations is an established fact. Oh, if it's already there, then why I have all these complexes? Why I do this? Why I do that? Why? What is wrong with me? And what's the problem? How do I get there? If I'm already limitless, I want to know how to experience it. You are experiencing it now. No, I know that. But how do I experience this limitation? Just for 5 minutes. But you are the experiencer. You are experiencing it right now. The experiencer, the experience, and the act of experiencing is all you. If you have a thought, who is having the thought? Me. The thinker, you. The thought, you. The process of thinking, you. The process of the thought leaving, you. That's all you. And that, when you see through that, all the limitations disappear. Yeah, but I understand that. I really got it now. I just have one small question. What? How do I really experience it? What is the practice of Vedanta? This is the practice. Being able to sit still and do what is called Shravanam, listening, is the practice. Primary practice, because the limitations are not real. If the limitations are real, then they cannot be removed. Real means what? That which cannot be altered. Yeah. Ice cube is cold. I'm not talking of the rap singer, okay? I'm talking of ice cube, real, that which you take out of the freezer. It's cold. Even though it may have some smoke coming out of it, it is cold. That is its nature. You cannot say, please bring me a hot glass of iced water. Yeah, the two cannot coexist. I want some hot ice. It doesn't exist. Except in, actually it does exist, because if you have some pain, you can buy something called hot ice. Yeah, I have seen. Yeah, all these things have to be told. Okay, so so everything, ice is cold, ice cube is cold, it is meant to be cold, that is its nature. What is its nature? It cannot give up. Yeah. So if the human being is limited forever. Limited forever means limited and happy being limited, because what you cannot change, you will endure. Yeah. But you are not happy being limited. You've tried everything, including positive thinking workshop. Yeah, I am limited, but I will pretend I'm limitless, and I'll try to just sort of live with the fact, if I don't have a car, at least I have 2 legs. If I don't have 2 legs, this is what the positive thinking workshop. If I don't have 2 legs, at least I have 1 leg to stand on. If I have no legs, at least I have hands. If I don't have hands, at least I have a torso. You can go on and on and on. Yeah. Then what? All that works till you see someone with 2 hands, 2 legs and a Mercedes. So then you say, okay, what's wrong with me? Only good thing about these positive, self-esteem workshops is that the self-esteem of one person goes up. Who? The workshop organizer. The workshop organizer's self-esteem is boosted because at least 5-6 people came to take the workshop. That's all. This is not positive thinking, because the problem is not negative thinking that needs to be replaced with positive thinking. The problem is that I am ignorant of the fact that I am already what I seek, and that ignorance has to be removed. Why? Because I can't handle it. No, somebody said ignorance is bliss. Don't you know that? Yeah, ignorance is bliss. When? If you don't know you are ignorant, then it is real bliss. Aha! But as soon as you know you don't know something, I can't handle it. Let's look up the Wikipedia, let's look up the dictionary, Google, Frugal, all these things happen. Why? Because I can't stand myself being ignorant. I hate myself, I have self-loath because of the fact that I'm ignorant. So if I'm already limitless, what is the separating factor between myself and limitlessness? Is it time? No. What we are talking about is outside of time and space. Is the one who has given time and space birth? Oh. Is it space? No, because it happens to be myself. That's what we are talking about. So the separating factor is ignorance, not time, not space. Oh. What should I do now? Remove the ignorance. Through what? Through surgery. Where do I go to, submit myself to surgery? Right here, right now, it's happening as we speak. This is the surgery of the removal of the tumor of ignorance. That is the only thing that needs to be removed. Everything else is just intact and wonderful. Nothing needs to be fixed up. That one doesn't need to be fixed up. That one cannot be fixed up, because a limited person fixing oneself up with more and more limitations is not going to cut it. One is always limited. But what if I am limitless? Oh my God, what if I am limitless? I have to give it a try. Why? Because nothing else has worked. It's the only reason to give it a try. And that's only when Vedanta works. Vedanta, knowledge of limitlessness, Vedanta. Vedasya antaha or Vedanam antaha, that which is at the end of the Vedas. I will talk about why it has got that epithet. But the knowledge of that which releases me from my ignorance that I am a limited human being comes after all the doors have been knocked down. Yeah. The knowledge comes. Oh, but how do I know it has come? Because you're here and I'm here and you've been listening for the last 1 hour. That's how you know. The knowledge comes. When? When you have asked for it. Really. It is something to ask for. It is not something, where you go hand out pamphlets at the street corner. I mean, we also have some pamphlets, but it's not those kinds of pamphlets, okay? Where you hand out pamphlets, you have to believe in this and you will be saved or something. It's not a converting thing. Why? Because you cannot be converted to yourself. This is the knowledge of you. This is the knowledge of you as free of complaints, as you already are, as you want to be. So what is there to convert to? What is there to convert from? That is why the knowledge must be chosen. One has to really say, I want this knowledge in so many words. And then it comes. Then it comes. Yeah, that is when it comes. One has to ask for the knowledge. One has to approach it. In another Upanishad it says, may you approach a teacher who knows how to teach this. Because you cannot go to a surgeon who doesn't know how to do surgery, right? Oh, I put all my trust in this person, but I don't know if they have a degree or not. For what? For removing a dangerous tumor that is not, because of which I can't eat or sleep. You cannot do that. You'll have to Google your doctor and see and check up the person who is doing the surgery. Check that person up first. Similarly, the person to whom you submit for the surgery of the ignorance has to know what they are doing. Yeah. That is why it says, may you approach a teacher who knows the methodology. How do I know whether they know the methodology or not? Look at them, look at their teacher. See how they walk, see how they talk, look at their teacher, what their teacher has taught them, look at their teacher, and look at their own life. At some point, when you are out in the, market, trying to buy a mirror, you will be checking up the mirror, right? You will stand this side, do I look slim? You will stand this side, is it making me look nice? Or is it distorting me like the Disney mirrors? No, it's making you look really nice. Oh, okay. So you buy it and you hang it up on the wall. The next day after you dress up, you look in the mirror again before going to work. Are you checking up the mirror or are you looking at yourself? Yeah? Yes, you are looking at yourself. Why? The mirror has already been checked out. This is what it is. So the words of the Upanishad are a mirror, handled by a proper teacher who knows the pedagogy of how to unfold this knowledge. What to say when, what not to say when. That is also there, yeah. Yeah. How much to say, how to say. What is the whole thing? The one who is able to handle the words of the Veda and transmit them just like they have been transmitted from generation to generation in an unending, what is called the student-teacher tradition, parampara. How do we know it has been transmitted and it's unending? I am here, you are here, simple. Yeah. You don't have to really, what should I say, have some kind of a mental mentation about that. I am here, you are here, teaching is still going on. Just like that, in so many areas of the world, teaching is going on. In so many planets, perhaps, where there is life, where there is free will, and where there is ignorance, teaching is going on. Yeah. So, that is how this is understood. Yeah. The Veda is divided into two parts. Why this is called Vedanta is going to be talked now. Veda is divided into two parts. Not very imaginative. The first part is called the first portion. Second part is called the second portion. Surprise! Yeah, Purva Kanda, Uttara Kanda, one name. Okay, not very imaginative. Then somebody also has divided it in terms of what the subject matter is trying to say. The first one is called Karma Kanda. Kanda means portion. Karma portion of the Veda. Karma means action. The second portion is called knowledge portion of the Veda, Jnana Kanda, knowledge. In the first portion, what does it contain? All kinds of recipes. Recipes for what? To have a good life without dropping the ignorance. Is that possible? Yeah, for a little while. How to have a good life in keeping with righteous living, dharma, in keeping with whatever I have to do in my life, my duties towards my family, towards all these, my as a student, as a householder, whatever it is, and how to really, go after my desires. The Veda doesn't say stop desiring. The Veda says what? Keep desiring. Just go after the desires, but do it properly through the correct channels. Oh, but I don't have children. Oh, here's a ritual. Putra kameshti yajna. Yeah. Oh, but I want money. Oh, here is another ritual. Oh, but there is no rain. And this is not a Eugene problem. There is no rain. What should I do? Here is another ritual called Kariri. Yeah, don't even say it in Eugene. Yeah, it may bring it on. Yeah. So here are all these rituals to get what you want individually and collectively by praying to the source, which is God, Ishvara, to the source, to that source which created everything, to a higher power. All these rituals are there. And the first portion of the Veda is books, volumes, 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 volumes. It will cover up this room, it will cover up this building, it may even cover up this campus, really. It's huge. And then what? The knowledge portion of the Veda is a slim paperback. The second portion. Oh, that's not fair. It is. Why? Because the first one addresses the desiring person. The ignorant person still in the clutches of one's desires to kind of fix up the limited person by having little, bandages. Hoping that the limited person will somehow become limitless. Somehow to fix up the person. This is the human effort. Yeah. And the Veda just goes along with it because, if somebody is not ready, you see, if a child is not ready for first grade and you keep teaching it first grade material, what will it say? It will switch off. It will not go in. So similarly here, the person is not ready to understand the fact that one's own limitations centered around oneself have to be removed in order to understand that one is already free. So it's a problem of not limitations but the ignorance which makes me feel like I have these limitations. So if the person doesn't know that, you cannot teach that. So you just go along with the person and say, okay, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing, do this, do some more of this. You keep the person busy, you keep the person going. Yeah. Until one day they say, what, all the time I'm working, what is this no end job, no end life, no end nothing, I've tried this, 7 marriages and so many children later I realize nothing works. Okay, read by line, we will start. Tomorrow, once we can see the words on the board and chant along with it, it will be good, wonderful. So I will say the closing chant, and then I will open it up for questions, both online and from the live audience. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadagya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Questions or doubts? Any questions? Also online people can type if you have any questions, as I take some of the questions from here.
You talked about how when we understand the knowledge, when we understand the knowledge,
yeah.
Right, that
yeah.
But we want to experience it.
Yeah, when we understand the knowledge and when we want to experience it, then
is the part of us that is judging our experience or is choosing to see it as
separate. Yeah, you got it.
Or not
yeah.
Is that what's keeping us from truly
Yes.
being in that place of
Yes, in assimilating the understandings. You see, because in all, that is true. The question is, when we keep saying, I know this, I know I am whole, but can I have one single experience of wholeness now? Please, please, please. When you say that, that means what? The experiencer wants to stand apart from the experience and enjoy the experience. Like with every other worldly thing. With music, you can be the experiencer. The music is in the ears of the experiencer. Like with a fruit, mango. The mango you can experience because the experiencer is separate from the mango that is eaten. And in that separation there is a small period of unification, but still I can still stand apart from it and enjoy the experience, right? So everything is discrete. So every field of knowledge you can get into, you can experience, and after that what? You can enjoy that experience. But what about yourself? There is a problem because the experiencer is who? You. Experienced is what? You. The process of experiencing? You. So how are you going to snatch yourself out and stand apart and watch yourself experiencing yourself? It's an impossibility. Yeah, it's not even about judgment. It's just an impossibility. Because what? I want to experience Brahman. Brahman is you. The truth of you is Brahman. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. What becomes? Was already Brahman, knows that one is Brahman. So if you say, I want one Brahman experience, Brahman is not one little thing in the world, like a mango. If you say, I want mango, you can give a mango experience to somebody. If you say, I want ice cream, you can give an ice cream experience to somebody. But if you say, I want Brahman, it's not a fruit, it's not yet one more thing in the world. If you make Brahman one more thing in the world, then what happens? Then it becomes limited. It's no longer limitless. Just like you cannot say, I really want to experience sleep. Can I please experience sleep? You are experiencing sleep, but you don't know it because you're one with that experience. Yeah.
Brahman is not only bliss.
No, Brahman is you. The truth of you is happiness. I don't use the word bliss at all. Yeah. I don't use that blessed word. Yeah. Because it leads to a lot of confusion. Because one is looking for some taste. There are 6 tastes and one more taste is Brahman taste, and when am I going to get it? If Brahman is one more taste among the tastes, then that means what? It's limited. Yeah. I am the experiencer. So I have to let go of that I, that is the experiencer, and be aware of the fact that I am, and that I am happens to be whole. I cannot remain standing and then still experiencing myself. How is that possible? Not possible. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Is the experience of limitlessness similar or the same as the Sufi experience of divine intelligence? Inheritance?
I'm afraid, Joanne, we are committing the same problem again. Yeah. Because the question is this, for the sake of the online. Is the experience of limitlessness the same as the Sufi, when the Sufi people say the beloved and that oneness? Well, you know what? First of all, I know what you're asking, but I'm going to be very particular about the usage of the terms. Limitlessness is not an experience, first of all. If limitlessness is an experience, it becomes an experience, it becomes limited. Okay? Got that? Yeah. So if limitlessness is not an experience, then it is you. So that you happens to be whole, happens to be complete, happens to be without problems, happens to be free of ignorance, happens to be free of the sense of limitations. That is you. That is the whole. So every experience is you alone. Supposing you're eating something. If you eat it with that awareness that I am the whole, what is eaten is the whole, the eater is the whole, the act of eating is the whole, you are experiencing limitlessness. Even when you cry and you're worried, why am I not experiencing limitlessness? You are experiencing limitlessness. Because limitlessness is not an experience that you suddenly go off in trance. No. every day, every minute, every thought, no thought, thought, the space in between two thoughts. Yeah. Seer, hearer, thinker, feeler, through in and through all these roles, that which inheres, that which is unchanging, that is you. Yeah. Yeah, same thing online also, same issue. Should you or can you expect to realize the experience? There is no realization other than the understanding that you are the whole. It is not an experience or the experience or half an experience or one experience. No. The problem is we are all experience hunters, hunting for experiences. And one comes to this knowledge, spiritual knowledge, hunting for spiritual experiences. What's the difference? In the world, one is hunting for, mundane experiences. In the world of the sacred, one is hunting for spiritual and sacred experiences. What we are talking about is the fact that one is not a hunter. That one, the hunter is always hunting for something limited. What we are talking about, that which is whole, that which is limitless, that which is free, always. Whether one hunts or not, one is already free. That is what one has to understand. It will come, don't worry. Yeah. Just understand every experience is you. Every experience is the whole. And is it comparable to what the Sufis say? Yes. Yes. I don't see any difference.
Well, what I wanted to understand was the concept of the divine inheritance that I remember from things I've read.
Divine inheritance.
Inheritance.
Oh, okay. Divine inheritance. Okay.
And they talk about accepting one's divine inheritance.
Okay.
And it seems to me that not experience, but the state of limitlessness.
Yeah.
That describes it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there are many. See, one is not lacking in experience, okay, or states. One is always in a state. Yeah. Some state or the other one is in, right? So one is not shy of experiences, and experiences in fact are only as good as they are interpreted, because now we have to sit and analyze what is that, what is this. So we are not interested even in experience, because an experience is that which comes and goes. A state is that into which one gets into and gets out of. And I'm not familiar with the concept of divine inheritance. We can talk about that later. But what we are talking about is what you are already and you don't know it. What one is already, but one doesn't know. Therefore, one keeps looking for that through all the ways in which one looks for discrete, experiences of happiness. And so one thinks that if one mango can make me happy, let's say this much happiness one mango gives, so that means so Brahman is like many mangoes at once. Many mangoes at once is not Brahman. It's 3 days in the bathroom. That's all it is. Yeah. It's not that the multiplying of the mangoes is going to give you extended bliss. No, I know that, but at least, mentally how to understand that. Understand that which is you. When you say I am, that I, which is devoid of complexes, that I which inheres through dream, deep sleep, waking, that I happens to be free of limitations, happens to be free of complexes. That's all it is. Yeah. So it's a permanent thing. It's not something which comes and goes. Yeah.
So how can we interpret our experiences in a way that helps us to open to that knowing?
How can one interpret one's experiences so that one can what is that? Help one's knowing.
Be open to that.
Be open to that knowing. Well, that's a good question. First, in order to interpret the experiences, you have to know. The knowledge must be correct, right? So if there is no knowledge, or if there is half knowledge, then whatever you interpret will be half valid, right? Half baked, half valid. So full knowledge means you know the interpretations will be in line with what one knows. So one lets go of the experiences for now. Don't worry, there are many areas to experience lots of things. In fact, whole life is full of experiences. But the focus is on firming the knowledge and letting go of the experience for now. Not trying to sort of juggle too many things. Firm the knowledge, understand the truth, understand what is the reality. Let yourself be taken, It's like saying, I'm about to submit myself to surgery, but I want to be talked through and told what all is happening. How do I know that this is being taken out? You don't have to know. Allow the ignorance to drop in the wake of knowing that one is already the whole. Yeah. So that means what? Then the knowledge becomes important. Then the giver of the knowledge becomes important. Yeah. So one has to attend the classes, one has to be with the knowledge, one has to give it a full chance before dismissing it, because you have to see whether it works or not. Yeah. 5 minutes into the operation, you don't fire the doctor. Oh, you don't know anything. I quit. I want out. That's why they put you out, so that you don't want out. Yeah. This is a surgery. This is exactly like a surgery. One has to submit to the knowledge. Yeah. More we will see later. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thanks to all the online people also. In some parts of the country it's 10:30. And so we will wish them all well, and I will see you tomorrow at the same time. All of you too. Okay? Om.